Hello students. So yesterday we have discussed about climate change, and having understood the global warming, its causes and the concept of greenhouse gases, today we'll try to understand what are the control measures of global warming. So the major cause of global warming was use of fossil fuels. So we can shift to alternative sources of energy. So recently you all must be aware that International Solar Alliance was launched by India and France to promote the use of solar energy in the tropics and subtropics. Okay, then one can also shift to wind energy. So the clean forms of energy which will not liberate CO2 or other greenhouse gases can be one of the control measure of global warming. So we can say that shifting to renewable energy resources can help reduce global warming. Then the next major contributor to global warming was deforestation. So what we can do is we can plant trees, or we can do afforestation. Okay, we all know that trees remove carbon dioxide from the atmosphere during the process of photosynthesis and store it in their biomass, okay, or synthesize food or carbohydrates from that CO2. So one can definitely plant trees to reduce global warming. Then one can also change some of the agricultural practices. Okay, so nowadays no tillage. You understand tillage? Tillage is the overturning of the soil for cultivation. It is believed that it increases the aeration in the soil. So this is a traditional practice everywhere in the tropical countries. But tilling of land also release carbon dioxide and nitrous oxide from the soil. So nowadays it is said that you should not till the field, you should cultivate as it is. Then the traditional rice cultivation, we have seen that flooding of the fields was responsible for the release of methane gas. So nowadays there are alternative farming methods for rice also. So all of these changes can help reduce global warming by decreasing the release of greenhouse gases. Then one can definitely be a responsible citizen, okay, while consumption of certain electronics. Okay, so one can follow the reuse and recycle principle. Everything that is electronics, then clothes and the other products that we use in our daily life, right from their extraction, then production, also in the transportation process, there is emission of greenhouse gases. Therefore, we should be responsible towards using these products. Okay, that means we should not continuously, the capitalism mentality that has to be changed. Okay. Then one can also promote, or one can also use public transportation. So instead of using private vehicles, we can travel by public transport to the various destinations in our day-to-day life. Okay. Then at home also we can inculcate small practices like not using electricity when it is not needed. Okay. Then you can recycle the organic matter to get some compost. So we can definitely change our day-to-day habits. So small changes can definitely bring a huge change in the environment. Yes, we can also walk or cycle or take public transport. So if there is a short distance which has to be covered, we can definitely walk, okay, instead of going on a vehicle. Then carbon sequestration. Carbon sequestration means what? Capturing of carbon dioxide and pumping it deep underground. This is a very recent technology that is being used. That's carbon dioxide or CO2 is captured from the atmosphere and it is pumped in the depleted oil gas reserves, okay, or deep in the ground, either in the oil gas reservoirs or saline aquifers, okay, coal mines which are already utilized. So this CO2 is pumped into these areas. Okay, so we are sequestering the carbon by this method. So there are various ways and technology required for this. It is done on a large scale in highly developed countries. Then policy formulation at national level and international level. You all must be aware of United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. It is known as UNFCCC. So what was done in 1992, several nations, they came together, okay, and as a responsibility towards the environment, they provided a framework to stabilize the greenhouse gases in the atmosphere. Okay, so that would prevent the anthropogenic interference with the climate change. What was done in this framework? The developed countries, they were held responsible, isn't it? Because industrial revolution began in European countries. So the developed countries were held responsible for the greenhouse gas emissions in the past as well as current greenhouse gas emissions. So now they were made responsible and they were asked to cut down their greenhouse gas emissions. Okay, so every nation was assigned certain carbon credits. Carbon credits means you will emit only a certain unit of carbon in a particular year. Okay, once those carbon credits are finished, you cannot carry out the processes that will emit the carbon. So this was done for developed countries, but developing nations were given some time and space to increase their greenhouse gas emissions, isn't it? Because then they would lag behind in the technological processes or technological development. So they were given some time so that they can increase their emissions. Now, developed countries can also earn carbon credits by doing certain projects, okay, of clean energy projects in the developing nations. So, if a developed country completes a clean energy project in the developing nation, it earns certain carbon credits. Okay, so this was done in 1992 by United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. So they established a principle of common but differentiated responsibility. Common responsibility, that means the reduction of greenhouse gases is a common responsibility of both developed countries and developing countries also. But there has to be a differentiated responsibility because developed countries were held more responsible for the greenhouse gas emissions in the past. So they were given more responsibility compared to the developing countries. Now, over years, it took negotiations among different countries. What actual protocol has to be there? So, in a place known as Kyoto, this place is in Japan. Okay. In the year 1997, all the parties of the convention, they agreed to a protocol to the UNFCCC. So this protocol is known as Kyoto Protocol. This protocol commits the industrialized nations to reduce their carbon emissions. Okay, so a set of rules is formulated so as to reduce their carbon emissions. Okay, so several measures have been taken by the countries all over the world to reduce the emissions of greenhouse gases and in turn reduce the global warming. So we have discussed the control measures of global warming. So what can be done? First, you can shift to alternative sources of energy because fossil fuel extraction, then its use contributes to the release of greenhouse gases. Renewable energy resources like solar energy, wind energy are cleaner sources of energy. There is also International Solar Alliance, which promotes the countries that fall in tropical and subtropical region to use solar energy. So all of this can reduce greenhouse gas emission and in turn global warming. Then reuse and recycle principle. This can be done in terms of electronics, the clothes that we wear. So recycling of products has to be done. Okay? Because if you consider electronics itself, extraction of those minerals from the earth and then their utility in producing the electronics, it would take or release large amounts of greenhouse gases. So recycling of them can be a better alternative. At home also we can change certain habits, okay, like saving of energy, not keeping the light on, okay, not keeping the light on when it is not required. Okay, then if we have to travel short distances, we can walk or use cycle instead of using the vehicle that runs on petrol. Okay, then whenever possible we can shift to public transport. Okay, so if you are living in an area where there is a good public transport, instead of using a private vehicle, you can definitely use public transport. Then we have also seen carbon sequestration. Carbon sequestration is done It's a new technology where carbon is captured and it is pumped deep underground into the oil gas reservoirs, deep saline aquifers, then coal mines. So capturing of carbon and storing it underground is nothing but carbon sequestration. This technology is done. This technology is available in highly developed countries. Then one can also change some of the agricultural practices like no tillage, then shifting from the traditional cultivation methods to the methods which release less amount of greenhouse gases. And important is the afforestation, that is planting of trees, because trees are the carbon sinks. We have seen this in the previous lecture. So afforestation of planting of trees is extremely important in reducing the concentration of greenhouse gases and thereby controlling global warming. Then we also talked about policy formulation at national and international level, that in 1992 United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change was adopted. So this framework provides a protocol. In 1997 the protocol was accepted or formulated. So this protocol commits the industrialized nations to reduce their carbon emissions, isn't it? Because they were held mainly responsible for the greenhouse gas emissions in the past and the current greenhouse gas emissions. So they were given an increased responsibility to reduce the greenhouse gas emissions. So every nation is given certain carbon credits. The nation can emit carbon only equivalent to that carbon credit. Now, when a developed country does a clean energy project in a developing country, it earns carbon credits. So in a way it reduces the greenhouse gas emission and also facilitates the development of developing nations. So developed countries were held more responsible, but developing countries were given some time and space so that they can increase their technological and industrial development. Now you should remember this protocol, which is Kyoto Protocol. It was accepted in 1997 in Kyoto, Japan, which committed the industrialized nations to reduce their emissions. So next topic now is ozone layer depletion. Let us first understand what is ozone layer. There is also good ozone and bad ozone. Ozone, ground level ozone is bad, but the ozone which is found in the stratosphere, we have seen this in the last few lectures, that there are layers, troposphere and stratosphere, as we move away from the ground. So in the stratosphere one finds a thin layer of ozone that blocks harmful ultraviolet rays of sun to reach the earth. Now there are various types of UV rays, UVA, B and C. Out of these, UVC is the most dangerous, or it causes the most damage. Now where is this ozone layer present? It is present between 12 to 50 kilometers above the earth's surface, and this region falls in the stratosphere. So definitely this layer is very, very useful to life. Why? Because it is blocking the harmful UVC rays from reaching the earth's surface. Now what is ozone layer depletion? Thinning of ozone layer by halogens. Halogens are compounds containing chlorine, fluorine, okay? Then methane, nitrous oxide. So when these compounds are released by various human activities, they cause thinning of the ozone layer. Okay. Now when the ozone at certain places, they completely deplete the ozone, okay, thereby creating ozone holes. Okay. Now through these ozone holes, the harmful UV rays, they reach the earth's surface, and they affect the life in various ways. So there are a number of human health problems. Then forests are affected, wildlife is affected. Okay, so different detrimental effects can be seen due to ozone layer depletion. So having understood what is ozone layer and depletion of ozone layer, let us see how ozone is formed in the stratosphere. Now the molecular formula of ozone is O3. That means it contains 3 atoms of oxygen. Now, in the stratosphere, oxygen molecule is broken down into 2 oxygen atoms. This happens in presence of sunlight. So this is the first step in the ozone formation process, that oxygen is broken down into 2 oxygen atoms in presence of sunlight. Then in the next step, that is step 2, a single oxygen atom combines with another oxygen molecule, that is O2, to form O3, that is ozone molecule. So now the formation of ozone and its destruction in the stratosphere is a continuous phenomenon. That means it continuously happens in the stratosphere, but the rate of formation always equals to the rate of destruction of ozone. Okay, so it is balanced naturally. Now, what happens when the major reason of this depletion of ozone in the stratosphere is the release of CFCs. CFC stands for chlorofluorocarbon. Okay, and certain biogenic emissions. Biogenic emissions means emission by biological sources of methane, nitrous oxide. But the major contributors to the ozone depletion are CFCs. Now let us first understand how CFCs were discovered. In the year 1930, CFCs or chlorofluorocarbons were discovered by Thomas Midgley. So he was a motor chemist and he gave them trade name as freons. Okay, they were known as freons, and they were widely used in the various coolants that are found in air conditioners, then refrigerators, aerosol sprays, then certain fumigants and plastic foams. So they became popular in 1930s, because earlier there used to be accidents with respect to electronics, okay, due to heating up of the electronics. So CFCs were discovered by Thomas Midgley, and they were known as miracle chemicals because because of their ability of cooling. Okay, so they were widely used in the air conditioners and refrigerators. Now, in 1974, Roland and Molina, these were two chemists, they pointed out that CFCs were lowering the average concentration of ozone in the stratosphere. That means, first time it was reported that they have role in ozone depletion. And over a period of time, this was confirmed and they were given Nobel Prize for this discovery. So Roland and Molina, they discovered that chlorofluorocarbons remain in the troposphere. Troposphere is a layer of atmosphere which is near to the Earth's surface. So they said that CFCs remain in the troposphere because they are insoluble in water and they are chemically unreactive. But within 11 to 20 years, these air compounds, they rise in the stratosphere, mostly to convection. Okay, so from troposphere, they will enter into the stratosphere. Okay, within 20 years. Now in the stratosphere, these compounds, so they said that in the stratosphere, these compounds break down under the influence of UV radiations. And when these compounds break down, they release chlorine atoms and fluorine atoms. Now, halogens that are present in the CFCs, they react with oxygen atom, okay, and form chlorine monoxide. So now the conversion of oxygen to ozone is reduced and this causes depletion of ozone layer. They also said that CFCs can persist or they can remain in the stratosphere from 65 to 385 years. So this is the range in which they can stay. So we have seen how the ozone is formed and the effect of chlorofluorocarbons on its depletion. Okay. That is, in the stratosphere, the oxygen atom breaks down, the oxygen molecule is broken down in presence of sunlight to form two oxygen atoms. These oxygen atoms, they will combine with oxygen molecule to form ozone molecule. Okay, that is O3. Now what happens when CFCs are there? CFCs, in presence of the UV radiations in the stratosphere, they break down to release chlorine. And this chlorine atom reacts with the oxygen atom to form chlorine monoxide. Why CFCs are considered more potent greenhouse gases? We have already seen that they can trap more amount of heat, but they can also persist in the atmosphere. So the years in which they can persist, that means the time in which they remain in the stratosphere, is around 300 years. Okay, some of them. So therefore they are the most hazardous chemicals, we can consider them. So we have seen initially what is ozone, then we have seen what is ozone layer depletion, then how is the ozone formed, okay, in the stratosphere. It is basically by a chemical reaction involving the breakdown of oxygen in presence of light that releases chlorine atom and then the second step, this chlorine atom reacts with the oxygen to form ozone molecule or O3. Then we have looked at the causes of ozone layer depletion, that chlorofluorocarbons, then the rocket launch where CFCs are mostly used, then the nitrous oxide, that is nitrogenous compounds, and also the biogenic emissions and natural phenomena such as stratospheric winds. But always the depletion caused by the natural process is less compared to the artificial chemicals, that is CFCs. Yes, this is a very good illustration where you can see the ozone layer depletion. So HCFCs are also modification of CFCs or a new compounds alternative to CFCs. Okay, then halogens and methyl bromide, you can see their sources. Okay, CFCs are used in aerosols, refrigerants, solvents. HCFCs are used in aerosols, refrigerants and solvents. Then halogens are used in fire extinguishers, methyl bromide in various pesticides. All of these are CFCs. So you can see here in this diagram that troposphere is a layer which is immediately surrounding the earth. It is up to 10 kilometers, and between 10 to 15 we have stratosphere. Okay, so the ozone is found in the stratosphere. It's a very good illustration where you can see here the CFC molecule. It has fluorine and chlorine in the first step. In the second step, the chlorine atom breaks down and it reacts with the one atom of oxygen, forming the chlorine monoxide, and that is where the ozone formation process is inhibited. Okay, then effects of ozone layer, very important. Now what happened, scientists observed holes in the Antarctic and Arctic region because of this ozone layer depletion. Okay, and the harmful UV rays were reaching the earth and they were detrimental to the life on the earth. So the first effect of ozone layer depletion is that the UV rays that reach the earth's surface, they cause various skin diseases, then certain cancers, sunburns, okay, to the humans. So all of these will become common if there is depletion of the ozone. Then it is UVB is also known to affect physiology and development in plants. So it will reduce the crop yield and in turn forest productivity. So it will also have effects on the food supplies, okay, that are available to the humans as well as animals. Okay, so forest will also be affected by ozone layer depletion. Then there is degradation of outdoor paints and plastics. Okay, degradation, or they fade out easily. Then marine life, we have seen water planktons, okay, when we were studying ecology. So the small microscopic organisms which float on the water surface and they are carried with the help of water current, those were known as planktons. So UV rays are known to affect them. So planktons, they form, or we can say they are the first in the food chain. Okay, so We have seen initially what is ozone, then we have seen what is ozone layer depletion, then how is the ozone formed, okay, in the stratosphere. It is basically by a chemical reaction involving the breakdown of oxygen in presence of light that releases chlorine atom, and then the second step, this chlorine atom reacts with the oxygen to form ozone molecule or O3. Then we have looked at the causes of ozone layer depletion, that chlorofluorocarbons, then the rocket launch where CFCs are mostly used, then the nitrous oxide, that is nitrogenous compounds, and also the biogenic emissions and natural phenomena such as stratospheric winds. But always the depletion caused by the natural process is less compared to the artificial chemicals, that is CFCs. Yes, this is a very good illustration where you can see the ozone layer depletion. So HCFCs are also modification of CFCs or a new compounds alternative to CFCs. Okay, then halogens and methyl bromide, you can see their sources. Okay, CFCs are used in aerosols, refrigerants, solvents. HCFCs are used in aerosols, refrigerants and solvents. Then halogens are used in fire extinguishers, methyl bromide in various pesticides. All of these are CFCs. So you can see here in this diagram that troposphere is a layer which is immediately surrounding the earth. It is up to 10 kilometers, and between 10 to 15 we have stratosphere. Okay, so the ozone is found in the stratosphere. It's a very good illustration where you can see here the CFC molecule. It has fluorine and chlorine in the first step. In the second step, the chlorine atom breaks down and it reacts with the one atom of oxygen, forming the chlorine monoxide, and that is where the ozone formation process is inhibited. Okay, then effects of ozone layer, very important. Now what happened, scientists observed holes in the Antarctic and Arctic region because of this ozone layer depletion. Okay, and the harmful UV rays were reaching the earth and they were detrimental to the life on the earth. So the first effect of ozone layer depletion is that the UV rays that reach the earth's surface, they cause various skin diseases, then certain cancers, sunburns, okay, to the humans. So all of these will become common if there is depletion of the ozone. Then it is UVB is also known to affect physiology and development in plants. So it will reduce the crop yield and in turn forest productivity. So it will also have effects on the food supplies, okay, that are available to the humans as well as animals. Okay, so forest will also be affected by ozone layer depletion. Then there is degradation of outdoor paints and plastics. Okay, degradation, or they fade out easily. Then marine life, we have seen water planktons, okay, when we were studying ecology. So the small microscopic organisms which float on the water surface and they are carried with the help of water current. Those were known as planktons. So UV rays are known to affect them. So planktons, they form, or we can say they are the first in the food chain. Okay. So when now, having understood the ozone layer depletion, its cause, its effect, okay, let us now look at what are the control measures. So the first control measure is looking for the alternatives to CFCs, that is chlorofluorocarbons. So people in various countries thought that it is necessary to phase out chlorofluorocarbons, that is to stop their production and remove them from their use in different refrigeration sectors. So they came up with partially halogenated compounds called as hydrochlorofluorocarbons. These cause less damage than chlorofluorocarbons, but again this turned out to be an interim solution. Interim solution means only for a short period. So a need was felt to phase out chlorofluorocarbons by the year 2000, and now the countries are committed to phase out hydrochlorofluorocarbons by 2030. So these compounds, they will be no longer produced by the year 2030. So now the alternative to HCFCs, that is hydrochlorofluorocarbons, are hydrofluorocarbons. So they are considered as less damaging compared to HCFCs and CFCs. Then what one can do? One can also use eco-friendly cleaning products. Nowadays you all must be aware of the popular cleaning product, which is bioenzyme. Okay, if you have the orange peels, okay, those are used to make bioenzyme. It is a efficient cleaning product. So we can shift to something which is less damaging to the environment. Then inhibition of various processes that release nitrous oxide. We have seen that nitrous oxide are released from the burning of fuels, that is vehicle exhaust, and also from the soil. So inhibition of various processes that release nitrous oxide. At the policy level, various countries they came together in a global conference on ozone depletion. Now this conference was held in Vienna in the year 1985. So it was felt that a protocol has to be followed by various countries in terms of phasing out of chlorofluorocarbons. And after 2 years, that is in 1987, a multilateral agreement, multilateral means many countries coming together and thinking of various possible ways that can be adopted to phase out the chlorofluorocarbons and to prevent ozone depletion. So in terms of ozone depletion, you have to remember this Montreal Protocol, which was signed in the year 1987 in Canada. Okay, so the countries, they came together and they framed certain policies and rules to phase out the chlorofluorocarbons. So now the target to phase out hydrochlorofluorocarbons is, initially the target was 2020, but now it is extended to 2030. Okay, because developing countries argue, developing countries argue that developed countries have utilized CFCs over a period of time, and these have contributed to their development. So now when it came to the developing countries, so they also want to be technologically advanced, and so therefore they said that they will be phasing out CFCs over a period of time by 2030. So we can just look at the topics that we have discussed today. First, initially we have discussed the control measures of global warming, that afforestation, that is planting of trees, can help to remove carbon dioxide from the air and thereby decrease the greenhouse gas emission. So in the process of photosynthesis, trees absorb carbon dioxide and store it in their biomass. Then practicing of no tillage. That means not tilling the agricultural fields. So that would not release the carbon that is being stored in the fields. Then uses of alternative sources of energy. Instead of using fossil fuels like coal, oil, natural gas, one can develop technologies that use cleaner fuels, mostly from the renewable energy resources such as solar energy, wind energy, and nowadays hydrogen as a potential fuel is also studied, that whether it can be used in future. Then promoting certain change of daily habits, like if you do not need electricity, why to keep the fan on, the electricity on. Then whenever possible, use public transportation, isn't it? Instead of using private vehicles, if one has to travel short distances, one can use cycle or walk for those short distances. So being a responsible citizen. Then policy formulation at national level and international level, we have discussed that there is this protocol, Kyoto Protocol, for reducing the greenhouse gas emissions. So developed countries, they were held responsible for the past and current greenhouse gas emissions. So there was a need to reduce the greenhouse gas emissions, and the developed countries, they are given carbon credits. Okay, so if they do any clean energy project in developing countries, they will be given carbon credits so as to compensate for their greenhouse gas emission. So a common but differentiated responsibility was established by Kyoto Protocol. Kyoto, this place is in Japan, and the protocol was signed over there. Then we have looked at carbon sequestration, where the carbon from the atmosphere is captured and stored in the depleted oil reservoirs, then saline aquifers. Okay. After that, we have seen what is ozone, that it is a thin layer of gas in the stratosphere that blocks the harmful ultraviolet rays, particularly UVC, to reach the earth. So it extends between 12 to 50 kilometers from the earth's surface. Now this ozone layer is depleted, or it is thinned by various CFCs and also by other biogenic emissions like of methane and nitrous oxide. Then we have looked into the formation of ozone, that how the ozone is formed. It is a two-step process where the oxygen is broken down by sunlight to release oxygen atom. So one oxygen atom will combine with another O2 molecule to form O3, that is ozone. It's a two-step process. Now what happens in the ozone depletion? You can see here the chlorofluorocarbons, the chlorine atom breaks down in presence of UV rays. This chlorine atom reacts with one of the oxygen atom to form chlorine monoxide, and therefore the formation of ozone is affected. Okay. So we have seen the different causes of ozone layer depletion, that the major were the CFCs were mainly held responsible for the ozone layer depletion. Then the rocket launch, the propellants used in rocket launch, they have CFCs. Then nitrous oxide. So also some of the natural phenomena such as stratospheric winds, biogenic emissions of methane, they deplete ozone layer. But the depletion by natural processes is less when compared to those of the anthropogenic cause, that means human made cause, that is CFCs. Then we have seen what are the effects of ozone layer depletion. It will have damaging effect on human health, particularly the instances of skin diseases, cancers, sunburns, they will become common. It will have effect on forest, then marine life will be disturbed. Also there will be increased warming of the atmosphere. Then we have seen the control measures of ozone layer depletion, that one can find alternatives for the refrigeration sector. So this field is still open to you all. You can search for the alternatives to the CFCs. Then eco-friendly cleaning products, because most of the cleaning products they have chlorine. So to search for the eco-friendly